Does anyone remember the iBuyers? I feel like that was all the conversation last year about iBuyers having to sell off a huge amount of inventory and causing a market crash, or iBuyers were such a huge part of the market here in Phoenix and across the country. They owned so much inventory, et cetera, et cetera. But I haven't heard much about iBuyers lately until I saw this article. So I want to talk about it. Let's compare it to what's going on in Phoenix too, because of course this is looking at everything from a national standpoint. And welcome back, everyone. I'm Caitlin McKegg. I'm a real estate broker here in Phoenix. If this is your first time, welcome, and please consider subscribing. OfferPad scoops up more homes in Q2 as path to profitability emerges. Profitability. Okay, great. That's a different different headline than what we used to see about iBuyers. And just to back up for a second, if you're not familiar with what an iBuyer is, it's an instant buyer, internet buyer. The I has, I think, changed what it's been describing over time. But long story short, it is basically an institutional buyer that will buy your home cash and then allow you to stay in it as long as you'd like until they actually take over possession, and then they resell it. And they're not really flipping these homes. Sometimes they do some really small upgrades. Maybe they put in new carpet or some fresh paint. Back, last year, it seemed like they didn't do anything at all, and then they just resold them for a higher price than what they bought them for. And they keep on rolling. And so last year, iBuyers got into, it seemed like, a lot of trouble when the market slowed down and buyers fell off the face of the earth, and they were stuck holding all of this inventory and really had no buyers interested in purchasing. So there was a lot of headlines about their not only their stock price going down, but just their revenues, and it was a bad look. And there's pretty much two main players in the iBuyer space right now, OfferPad being one of them and Opendoor being the other. As far as I know, I think Opendoor is larger than OfferPad, or at least their purchases and inventory has been larger than OfferPad's. But let's take a look at what this article is saying. OfferPad scoops up more homes in Q2 as path to profitability emerges. Having unloaded almost all of its older inventory, the iBuyer ramped up home acquisitions by 131% to 840 homes. Okay, that's not that many. In the second quarter of 2023, expects positive adjusted earnings by year's end. Very interesting. This goes on to say OfferPad reported a $22.3 million Q2 net loss on Wednesday, down 62% from the previous quarter and a five-fold reduction from the $121.1 million loss. Okay, 121 million loss the company reported during the last 3 months of 2022. I'm pretty sure everyone assumed iBuyers were going out of business last year. And if you were a buyer last year, you could not wait to see a house that was owned by Opendoor or OfferPad, because the thought was you could get it for pennies on the dollar, that they're going to have to unload all of this and they're going to give away their inventory. And then we were kind of surprised that they weren't, and they weren't really negotiating very well either. And now we see that they have somehow unloaded it all, or most of it. They don't have a lot of that old inventory anymore, and they're starting to buy again. Much of the improvement was due to a 13.5% gross profit margin on sales of homes OfferPad acquired after September 1st. So my guess is that they took advantage of the spring increase in demand that we saw, and thankfully they did, because that helped them get rid of some of that inventory, and they're ready to rock and roll again. But the market's kind of slow right now, and interest rates are high, buyer demand is low, and also, if they're purchasing homes from sellers who want to sell their home, there's not a whole lot of sellers out there that want to sell their home right now because they don't want to go buy a new one with that interest rate. So once again, Curious on how this is going to work out for iBuyers. Less than 2% of OfferPad's inventory was over 180 days old, allowing the iBuyer to boost Q2 acquisitions by 131% to 840 homes. Now, again, 131% sounds crazy, but 840 homes is not that many when you think about all of I don't know how many states OfferPad is in, but I believe they're nationwide, or at least outside of just Arizona. I know Open Door is for sure, but OfferPad is headquartered here in the Phoenix area. So let's take a look at some numbers. Why don't we? Let's see what they're actually doing here in Phoenix. So OfferPad purchases in Greater Phoenix, this is within the last quarter. In April, they bought 5 homes. May, they bought 16. And June, they bought 19 homes. Very small amount, but as you can see, they are ramping up their purchases just as this article states. So here in Phoenix, that totally aligns. Last year in the fall, they were kind of hitting their peak here, and then they stopped purchasing quite as many, and they've kind of been dormant, for lack of a better term, since then, laying low. And then let's see what their sales look like. So they're ramping up their purchases, but their sales numbers in the last quarter have been going down. So 39, and then in May they had 26, and then in June they had 14. So, I mean, I don't know if they're purchasing more but not selling as many. That doesn't sound too good. But let's take a look at Open Door, because they are the other big player in our market as far as iBuyers go. And they have always been bigger in terms of the inventory that they've owned and sales that they've had as compared to OfferPad. So in the last month, they are also ramping up their purchases. They've got 32 in May, 32 in April, 42 in May, and then 57 in June. So quite a bit more than what Open Door or OfferPad has been doing. And then for their sales are also going down, 290, 225, and 153. So to me, it seems like, why are you buying more if you're not selling as many? Are we going to get back into the same situation that they had last year at this time? I'm happy to see that they've been able to recover, but I just don't know that if I were them, I would continue to buy so many, but hey, we'll see what happens. Also, I don't know where they're finding them to buy, because the inventory in general is so low. Just sellers in general aren't very interested in selling unless they have a really good reason to. So that brings me to sales numbers, right? So all of this is happening here in Phoenix, but it's no surprise that just sales in general, transactions in general in Phoenix are low. And so they're getting some of this market share. And I just wanted to see how many iBuyer purchases are we seeing right now. So this is the percentage of home sales by intended use. This has got some great information on here too. We don't have to just talk about iBuyers, but iBuyer right now is 0.5% of the sales in the past quarter in Q2. And previously, it was 0.5%. And then in Q4 of last year, 1.6%. In Q3 of last year, 3.8%. 5.7% a year ago, last Q2. Or not last Q2, but of 2022. You know what I'm saying? So you can see that was the highest that it was as of recently, probably the highest it's ever been, it looks like. If we even go back to 2019, nothing was up that high. So they hit their peak last year in terms of home sales, and it totally dwindled, but they're still there, existing a little bit. And while we're here, let's just break down the others. We've got currently, or as far as Q2 is concerned, 12.2% are investor purchases. We've got 10.2% of folks buying for a second home, and then 76.8% owner occupants purchases. So that's a healthy thing to see. We want to see a lot of owner occupants in our market because that means that's true demand. And as you can see, when the market was going a little wild, we had much less in terms of owner occupant purchases, about 10% less. But anyway, that's a story for another video. Let's look at sales. So like I said, sales are low. And so somehow these iBuyers are still getting market share here. But again, kind of just curious what the plan is, because if demand is down and they're ramping up their purchases, who are they going to be selling them to? And today our number of sales, 44,000 year-to-date sales. But as you can see, all the way back to 2015, we're the lowest sales number year to date since 2014. That's the only line that I was able to find on here in the relatively recent future, 9 years ago, that falls in line with where we're at this year. So we've kind of been tracking our 2014 sales number of transactions. So we'll see if that continues or goes down. I don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on that. But either way, OfferPad, Open Door, those iBuyers are planning on getting some market share there. So I hope this was helpful and interesting to you. Just another data point in our market. So keep an eye out for those iBuyers. If you are looking to buy a home, we'll see if they continue to purchase and might have an oversupply of inventory at some point. And if you're a seller and you're looking for that convenience of selling to an iBuyer, they're out there buying. So anyway, thank you for joining me today. If you have any questions or want some additional information, check the description. I have a link to connect with our team. I also have a link where you can check our MLS for homes for sale or get an instant home value. So thank you guys. I'm Caitlin McKeag with the Desert Dreamers team. I will be back on Monday with another market update.